Shrigley, America's survival song. Danielle, Shrigley, America's survival song. Danielle, Shrigley, surviving against the odds. Daniel, Shrigley, America's survival song. America's survival song. America's survival song. America's survival song. Survive this.
Hey, this is Dan Shrigley. Welcome to Survival Trek Talk Radio. Today's topic is survival tips, and we might get into a little bit of a discussion about some content for a packing list, which will be really viable. So anyway, we're talking about survival tips today, and then I'm going to also play you a sample of one of my friends. Her name's Tori Martin. She's a country music artist, and she's rising. She's voted as the nation's #1 undiscovered talent, which means she hasn't signed a label yet. She's signing a label. I promise, because if I have anything to do with it, she's getting herself a label. I've been promoting her quite a bit. Her team has been promoting her. She's been promoting herself quite a bit, and she's getting a lot of exposure. So Tori Martin will play her Restless Soul, and she also wrote me a song that's going to go on to Survival Trek Escape, but it hasn't been recorded yet. But that one's called Save Yourself. So we'll play that a little bit later. But let's get on to our survival topics. First, fundamentals and priorities of survival. They never go away, but the order for which they are used might change, and that is environment specific, and that is regional specific, and it could also be your skill set too, and what you're capable or not capable of doing. But always remember, you're always very capable, and sometimes more than you ever knew. And a lot of it just depends on your own creativity and what you can do for yourself by using your imagination. It makes a whole lot of difference if you're walking and you're looking at the ground and you see a rock and you're like, wow, that kind of looks like an arrowhead. That is an arrowhead, so grab it. And use it to your advantage. Then, when you're walking by and you see a stick, and you're like, that stick, I can use that for a walking stick. Walking stick's a great tool. I mean, it's good for balance. It's good for if you're walking and you come up on a snake, you can kind of use that to push you away from the snake. Don't try to push the snake away from you. You use a stick, you throw it kind of at the snake's face, kind of distract him. And you just hold it at its length. So you want a good 6-foot walking stick. So you add that 6 feet plus the length of your arm extended. And you just push it down towards the snake. You'll see on television shows where they're going out and they're getting forked sticks and trying to capture venomous snakes. But ask yourself, do you have any anti-venom available to you? And how long would it take you to get to some anti-venom? If you're truly in a stranded or lost situation, should you be messing with a poisonous snake? Leave the wildlife alone. That's my suggestion. Leave the wildlife alone. You got to remember what you don't see with these survival shows, and even my own show when that comes out. And we have been doing some recording, but when that comes out, you got to remember, even I have a production team. I have advisors. We've been proofing that lane. That guy he's had a lot of briefings and stuff like that. There probably is some anti-venom in an aid kit somewhere that they take with them in case someone gets bit. And then not in all cases is that even true, because I read an article and seen some photographs of what looked to be or claimed to be, and I don't know if it's 100%, but one of BG's, I'm not going to say his name because I don't think he deserves his name said, but one of BG's producers got bit by a snake, and I mean the venom is so it just took the flesh right away. I mean, to the point where you could see the bones in the guy's top of his foot, and it were bleach white. I mean, it ate the blood. It just incredible. It just basically, I hope that guy's okay. I don't even know which producer it was, but anyway, it just looked horrible. I felt so bad for the person, whoever it was. But you can see the top of the foot just wide open. It's just nasty. Snake venom is no joke. It's a neurotoxin. It's just like there's different types of. It's like almost like chemical warfare. It's like really nasty stuff. So the other thing is getting back on shelters and water stuff and is. Your need for water never goes away, hot or cold. That's always a consistent thing. That's going to stay there. You need to consume water when it's cold. You need to consume water when it's hot. The bad thing is when it's cold out, people don't think about water consumption and hydration as much as they do when it's super extremely hot outside. They lose that focus. And that's why dehydration in the winter is very common and very deadly because when it's hot out, you're instinctively looking for water. You're aware that you need water. You feel it physically right away. But in the winter when it's cold, that dehydration kind of creeps up on you because you are sweating. And when you're sweating and it's cold out, that creates another bad thing, which you can get hypothermia and freeze because you're sweating. So when you're doing labor-intensive stuff, you always want to kind of do labor-intensive stuff in the daytime, more towards like the noonish time. But and you want to not do labor-intensive stuff, right before the sun goes down because you're going to get really chilly and you're not going to have enough time to dry out. And especially when it's cold outside and the temperature changes by 30 to 40 degrees because it is now in the middle of nighttime. And if you're up in somewhere like Alaska, up north, on the outer rim of, the Arctic, then you're in a bad spot because you're going to freeze. And so you got to be really careful. Water consumption is important no matter if you're in the desert or you're in the ice caps. You got to drink water. You just want to be careful, like you don't eat ice, you don't eat snow, but you can melt them because you can hurt yourself if you are eating snow and ice. You want to melt it. And remember, snow has only 10% water and 90% oxygen in it. Whereas ice has the opposite. It actually has 90% water and it's only made up of 10% oxygen. So you're better to go for an icicle or a chunk of ice and melting that in your container. And you can use either body heat or you can use solar heat. Because there's convection, and then there's different types of ways of heating stuff, and there's where you use convection, and then you use heat by transfer or contact, and so I don't want to get off point here. I want to stay on point, but I wanted to touch a point with shelters, okay, and that kind of will lead into clothing and layering, but just remember, when you have a heat transfer, that there's three ways to treat that heat transfers. It either transfers by air movement, or it transfers by radiation, or it transfers by contact. Okay, so those are the three ways that heat transfers. All right, and you need to know what those are, so that way that's another thing to put in your tool belt for your brain. But getting back to what I wanted to focus on is shelters. You need them no matter where you're at. You can be in snow-capped hills and mountains. You can be in a desert plain, because a shelter provides this for you. It provides you a shield from the sun. Gives you shade, artificial shade. It gives you warmth, and it gives you protection from the elements like rain. So, think of shelter as a pair of goggles that you wear to protect your eyes from, sun, wind, dust, and rain. Goggles, those protect your eyes, and think of a shelter in that fashion. you always want to have a way to escape the element. So you want to have a way to escape direct sunlight. You want to have ways to escape snow, hail, rain, etc. You want to have a way to stay warm and trap your heat. At the same time, you want to keep your shelter form-fitting pretty much, because if it's too big, you won't have any chance to, create enough body heat inside your shelter. So that's why layering and insulating is so important once you get a shelter built, is you really want to keep your shelter just a little bit bigger than your body, so that way your shelter becomes a big giant, wilderness sleeping bag, and that in itself will keep you protected. And so I have a packing list here that I wanted to talk about too with you guys as well. And you want to definitely prioritize your list. So we're going to get into talking about a packing list as soon as we finish with playing a sample of Tori Martin. We will come back and do the discussion about packing lists and what should go in that. Okay, but before you go into the break and listen to this song, what I would like to do is just touch a base with, so you have fire, shelter, water, food, and clothing, and those priorities really determine on what your conditions are and what your environment is. If you're freezing and you need to make some clothing, the first thing you're going to need is vegetation, but green vegetation. And then something that's soft against your skin, and you're going to want to put in massive layers, but you want maybe something that's smooth, so you're going to probably go for leaves first, and then from there you're going to you'll eventually transfer up into with maybe setting some traps and snares. You get you some hide, and knowing how to take your animal and skin it and dispatch it and all that stuff. That's called dispatching your kill, and then you basically, that's the way of processing it. So you maximize every portion of that animal, and use it for maximum food and maximum clothing and things like that. So, we're going to go ahead and listen to this song real quick. This is only a 30-minute program, as all of them are, and so we got to get this song playing so I can finish this packing list topic, and then we can go ahead and wrap up our show for this 30-minute segment. Thank you for listening in, and here is Tori Martin, Restless Soul.
City lights.
That was Tori Martin's Restless Soul. I am Dan Shrigley, your host with Survival Trek Escape Talk Radio. This is the platform for my television show, Survival Trek Escape. I am also known as America's Survival Son, and our topic for discussion right now is a packing list, okay? And you're going to see what the value of a packing list is. All right, first I'm going to go through and just name off things on a packing list. And I hope you have a pen and paper. I was supposed to kind of warn you ahead of time to go get a pen and paper. I was doing a live broadcast before, and then we lost the feed, and so now we're doing a pre-recorded broadcast, so we don't have that issue again. Either way, a one-person tent or water-resistant tent is a good item for your packing list, unless you have a larger group, then you're packing for a larger group. Cam lights are a good thing. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to name off everything that's on this list, and then I'm going to go and talk about what I think is important that's on this list. Everything is obviously important, but you're not going to be able to take all this with you. It depends on how much you want, what your activity is. So I'm just going to name off everything that's here so you can kind of start thinking the way I think, okay? And it's going to be real easy for you. So a one-person tent, chem lights, a crank radio and flashlight, a backpack, sleeping bag, survival blanket. A survival blanket can be made of fleece. Fleece is a really good material for survival. It's actually one of the better ones because even when it gets wet, it has the ability to keep you insulated and warm still, rather than some material when it gets wet. It makes you cold. Fleece is a very good survival tool. But there's a survival blanket, and it usually looks like a space blanket, and it's all shiny. It looks like aluminum foil, basically, or a big giant, shiny mirror-looking blanket. And that's also good because it traps in body heat, but it also protects you as well. The survival blanket has several purposes, which brings into point. If you're going to put something on your packing list, it should have more than one purpose. It should have at least 3 or 4 purposes you can use it for, like a candle. You can cook with the candle. You can use a candle to let you know if your snow cave has got enough oxygen in it, because if your candle burns out, and that lets you know that your ventilation is not serving its purpose in your shelter, and you don't want to get carbon monoxide poisoning. So and then your candle is good for a light source. So a candle's got many things. So that's just an example. If something with more than one use of it, but it's only really doing one activity, but that activity serves more than one purpose. All right. So then you got crank radio, flashlight. You should, if you're going to have a packing list, a crank radio and a flashlight is always a good thing to add on there. A little bit expensive. Probably, I don't know. I don't think that they're very expensive. You can, Radio Shack, I don't usually get plugs, but that place has a lot of good stuff that you can go get. And there's a lot of online shopping you can do as well. I think eBay, you can go to eBay or Amazon or whatever and get a lot of good stuff too. Backpack, sleeping bag, survival blanket. You need those. Those are 3 things that you're going to need. And they need to, when you're in a survival situation, you want to pack light, but you want to be effective. So, don't go for the heavy, thick stuff. Go for the light, mobile stuff, because whatever you have on you, you got to pack it in and out. All right, so here we go. Survival knife and a pocket knife, they go hand in hand, because the pocket knife or a utility knife, like a multi-tool, is what you're going to use, but you never use the survival knife until you are in a legitimate survival situation, a legitimate one. Or you have a survival knife that you use, but you have your real survival knife in case the stuff hits the fan. You can use that knife, and it's the sharpest blade you own. It's it's preserved, and that's what a survival knife is. A survival knife is the equivalent of if you went to war and you didn't have your rifle issued to you and the ammo. All right, you wouldn't want to be on the battlefield without that at a minimum. Okay, so your survival knife, treat it like it's as important as your rifle. But you have your multi-tool and your pocket knife, and you can use those utility tools to effectively do everything else if you use them right. And there's methods to using those tools, and a lot of people don't know that you can chop a tree down with the blade of a knife, and you don't need an axe. And there's a chipping method, kind of, they call it the beaver method, and then there's the back of the blade hammer strike method, and so you can use that with with many things that you might want to do. There's a parang. A parang is like a machete. It's just another name for a machete, pretty much. It's got a different shape to it. There's matches and damp strikes. So you want to have matches that even if they are in a damp, moist environment, they're still going to light. But you still want to protect them, even though it says damp strike doesn't guarantee that they are going to work, but they're better than having traditional paper matches. Candle, you need to have a candle. I already talked about that pretty much, but you need to have a candle, and you can use Crayola crayons as a candle too, and they come in a box of 65, or they come in a box of 12, or whatever the number is. Each of those lasts for about 30 minutes when you're burning a candle, and the paper that holds, that's wrapped around the candle, the Crayola marker, or not marker, the Crayola crayon actually acts like a wick, and it will burn for about 30 minutes. Then you have flint, and flint is just something that you can strike a fire with. Then there's a magnifying lens. All right, magnifying lens, same purpose. You can use that to start a fire using radiated heat. And then there's the needle and thread. You can use needle and thread for repair work. You can use needle and thread to suture yourself up. It's a first aid kit, and it's it can be used for so much that you don't even know what you might need it for. But when you need it, you know you need it, and when you don't have it, it's devastating. So. But fishing hooks are a good thing to have. You want to have as many of them as possible because you can make trout lines, and if your trout line gets taken away, your only food source isn't taken away incomplete because you got about 100 fishing hooks that you got for 99 cents from your favorite shopping place. Then there's a heavy test line. You must go for the heavy test line because then you don't have to worry about size of what you're catching. No matter what size it is, it gives your line a better chance of retaining your catch. And especially if you're putting a trout line and you're walking away and you're coming back, you don't want that fish to bite on there, and then a bigger fish comes to bite on that fish and locks on your line, and then it gets stuck there because it can't snap your line. So that's a good thing too. And then one day I'll talk to you guys about how to do an effective trout line. But then there's compasses. You want to proof your compass. And I would always get a mil-spec compass because they're genuinely the best, and that one that's Radiac. A Radiac mil-spec compass, because that means that you can see the dial all times of day. Even at night, you don't have to use a flashlight to illuminate your dial, so you can see your dial. Your dial's always glowing because it's radioactive. It's not so radioactive that it's deadly to you, but it's radioactive enough that it keeps that constant glowing thing, like a Trigicon. All right. You want to proof your compasses though, and make sure that they work, because if you don't and they fail you, they can be off by 3 degrees or so. So you want to do declination. You want to adjust for that. You want to adjust for the GM angle and all that stuff. So, then there's beta lights, and those last for 15 years, no batteries, self-illuminating. That's a beta light. They're a little pricey, but they're worth it. There's snare wire. You want to have snare wire. You can use that to trap animals and stuff. And then there's flexible straw, and also a filter straw. I wouldn't use your straw for drinking, but they're really lightweight, maybe an ounce and a half, and you can use them to filter up to about 30 gallons of water and drink that water. But I wouldn't use that last. I would only use the straw if I was mobile, and that way it saves you some time for speed, because if you're at an encampment, you're already kind of set there. You might as well just use primitive methods. And your lighter, your big lighter, you want to save those for when you need it and you're mobile and you're trying to achieve self-rescue situation. You want to use primitive methods when you're encamped and you're going to be somewhere for a length of period of time, because you're preserving your technology. Always preserve your technology and use primitive first. And it gives you practice to using it. And if you absolutely fail at the primitive method and you can't get it, then you have your technology to back you up. But don't use up all the resources that you have that are your technological advancements up front, because if you run through those and you're not confident with the other stuff that's related to the primitive side, you're not going to be able to bounce back from that very easy, and you're kind of going to be in a bad spot. So while you can, if all things come down to start your fire or filter your water by using primitive methods, by all means, do that first and preserve your technology, like I said previously. All right, so you have medical kits. You want to have medical kit common sense. You want to have surgical blades or something equivalently pretty sharp. You never know, but a sharp instrument is a lot better than a dull instrument, a lot better. Dull knives get you hurt, okay? Butterfly sutures, they're really fast, they're really easy. Some people aren't really keen on sticking themselves with a needle and suturing them up. They're not John Rambo. So a butterfly sutures is something that you can get your hands on, and you can use them. And then, a metal drinking container, not only is good for boiling water, but you can cook your food in it as long as you don't burn the food to the bottom of the container. But a canteen cup that, you could buy at any Army surplus store is really good. There's duct tape, 100 feet of it, and paracord, 100 feet. Those are great things you have. They complement each other very well. You can make weapons, you can make tools, you can use them to help make shelters. There's so much you can do. You can even make tourniquets with them. I mean, you can do a lot of stuff. Make first aid stuff with it, everything. You can magnesium and fire strikers. Those are really cool to have, and you need to practice with them. You can't just go buy one, walk out in the wilderness, and start a fire. You need to know how to use it. There is a method to even using those, and so make sure you work on that. You should get good enough where it's like striking a match once you get comfortable. A crook knife is the best survival knife I've ever seen on the planet because you can make other tools with the crook knife. You carve them out and stuff like that, right? But hey, our show's about to wrap up, and we're going to continue this episode with a follow-on, part 2, because we're running out of time, and this is a really hot topic show. And so we're going to end with my theme song for the last part of the show, America's Survival Song, by Bruce John Dickinson and Frank Knight. Both are awesome friends of mine, and they made me this song. They're rock stars, rock legends. They're out of the United Kingdom. So look for this song as it plays on the intro to Survival Trek Escape. Here we go, and I'll see you on part 2.
Daniel Shrigley, America's Survival Song. Daniel Shrigley, America's Survival Song. Daniel Shrigley, surviving against the odds. Daniel Shrigley, America's Survival Song. America's Survival Song. America's Survival Song. America's Survival Song. Survive this.